One might argue that the country's best assets are its resources, things like oil, gold, copper, or even cocaine for Mexico. However, if we take a closer look at some of the resource-rich countries in the world, it's a different story entirely. Surely, we have countries like Norway, the UAE, Qatar, who are extremely rich and equally blessed with vast resources. But we also have countries like Venezuela and the DRC. Venezuela having the world's largest oil reserves and the DRC having 3 trillion US dollars of natural resources yet to be dug out of the ground. Despite being rich in natural resources, these countries are the poorest people on earth. About 80% of the population lives in extreme poverty. On the other hand, if we have countries like Switzerland, Japan, and Singapore, countries with barely any resource yet very prosperous, the GDP of Japan alone, an island nation, is greater than the entire African continent combined. So, if natural resources don't make a country rich, then what is the secret recipe? People. People are a country's greatest resources. They are its greatest assets, and not just regular people, but hardworking, young, and educated people. That is the only formula to a prosperous nation. Africa has a lot of people, especially young ones. However, the literacy rates are so high, the majority of the adult population can barely read or write. It was worse back then when the individual countries were just gaining their independence. For example, the DRC had only about 7 college graduates when it first gained its independence. Progress is being made, however, it's slow and painful. So the question begs, why do most Africans find it hard to learn, unlike other people in Asia or Europe? The answer, surprisingly, is language. It has always been language. That has been a major obstacle for Africa going forward. The continent is very diverse, with about 3,500 ethnic groups and 2,500 languages, with each country having more than 20 ethnic groups. Choosing one language from one ethnic group to be used in schools or other administrative functions such as running of the government would cause tensions from other ethnic groups. This can lead to some serious civil wars and genocides. Hence, choosing one language is not an option. So they ended up choosing English, Portuguese, French, and other foreign languages, just like Mexico took Spanish from Spain. But unlike Africa, Mexico made Spanish their first language, not only to be used in schools or government offices, but a language for all. English or French, however, is a secondary language in Africa, used only in schools and government administratives. It's like living in the US with parents who speak only English, but when you go to school, you learn in Chinese using the Chinese logograms in terms of writings. Not everything that is real and useful is tangible and visible. Time, for example, is real, but it can only be efficiently managed when it is represented by a clock or a calendar. Throughout history, human beings have invented representational history such as writing, musical notation, or even double entry bookkeeping to grasp with the mind what human hands could never touch. Switzerland also has a language problem, but they solved this by using four instead of just one language as their official language in their schools. This is Germany, French, Italian, and Romansh. So, what's the way forward? What is the solution for Africa? How can we make learning relatively easy and fast for most African children? Well, one solution is to completely drop all African languages and make English the first primary language, which is impossible to implement, and if it were possible, it could take years to happen. Another solution is to create a unique alphabet or writing system that can represent most African languages. However, that is easier said than done. Learning in one language while using another in your daily life is a major challenge. Hence, Africa must make changes if it wants to speed up the learning process. Of course, English is a major advantage. being widely used all across the world and act as a mediator language for many ethnic groups. However, it's not easy to pick up, especially for many children in rural areas. I want to thank you for watching. Subscribe and like if you enjoyed and help support the channel over on Patreon. I will see you next time. Peace.